Hi, even the Beyonder gave out mat leave, so what's stopping you? Andrew, and this is Gayties Toys. On today's MIA 80s Ladies, we're going to be finally rounding out the Secret Wars from 1984, specifically the Avengers. In this case, much like the X-Men, the women from the Avengers didn't really have a whole lot of, claim to stake, as it were, in terms of, being proposed or prototyped or anything like that. But I mean, I love to complete a set. So in this case, we're going to be finally looking at three characters who kind of played a major role within the original run of Secret Wars, as well as maybe a few others in the mix. So let's just get right into Captain Marvel, She-Hulk, and Wasp from Secret Wars. In past videos regarding Secret Wars, I mean, we've talked ad nauseum about, the history of both the comic book event that was really kind of requested by Mattel to, in tandem, sort of create a rival to superpowers. You can go back to other videos and sort of get more of a deeper dive on that, or, as usual, go talk to Dan Larson over at Secret Galaxy. This is not that channel. Nevertheless, we've talked about X-Men, we've talked about, say, Dazzler and Mystique, who were at least, proposed for the next wave. It's really time to sort of get into the Avengers and to kind of a lesser and branched off extent, the Fantastic Four. So we're going to start off with one of my faves, Wasp. Wasp, alongside her long-term, complicated boyfriend, Ant-Man, first appeared in Tales to Astonish number 44 in 1963. The two of them were sort of investigating the death of her father. It involved aliens, truly very weird. From the jump, she was very much like her early peers of the women of Marvel. Kind of a socialite, a little rich, sewed costumes, was the heart of the team. Just so vacuous and also just impossibly bangable. Everyone who met her loved her. Unlike her contemporaries, however, Jean Grey, Sue Storm, they went off and became such much more complicated characters. Wasp really doubled down. She became more vacuous, more vain. Really, representation matters, okay? She will go on later to be, one of the founding members and the first woman of the Avengers, even giving them their name, and would often lead the team. And beyond that, even be sort of, one of the longest running members of the team. That said, when Avengers got looped into Secret Wars, she was amongst them. Of all the characters, frankly, men or women, she probably had the most to do. She had a bit of a side quest that led her into a very strange and rarely talked about romance with Magneto that I don't really like to think about too much, but it's a thing that happened. And again, with such a huge cast, particularly among the women, I mean, it was nice for her to actually even just get some screen time, solo-ish. Next up would be Captain Marvel, who would, for all intents and purposes, is Monica Rambeau. She would be one of many, many characters to, be given the name Captain Marvel. She would first appear in the Amazing Spider-Man Annual number 16 in 1982. And, Marvel, at the time, they really gave characters and concepts a lot of breathing room and a lot of time to sort of find an audience. So they really seem to have pushed her as sort of a poster girl for Marvel in the 80s. I mean, the name speaks for itself. They really wanted to make her a thing. Never quite materialized. I mean, Monica sort of was very much a kind of a junior member and then a leader in the Avengers, but eventually, as the 80s waned and post-Secret Wars, so did she. And so she would really kind of ride out the 80s, much of the early 2000s, sort of under the radar, if at all, and she's really kind of got more of a spotlight in recent years, going by many, many different names. Currently at Spectrum, but Photon, take your pick. She's had a few. The character's great. It's just that she just never quite clicked, which is unfortunate because she had such a fabulous outfit. And someone we're going to talk about a little bit more in the final verdict. And last-ish on the docket is another one of my faves, She-Hulk. She-Hulk was sort of created by Stan Lee, really in response to the Incredible Hulk TV series, as well as the Bionic Woman. He kind of feared that she would, be created by the TV series the same way Bionic Woman spun out of the, $6 Billion Man. So he just, for trademark reasons, kind of created a female version of Hulk, not unlike, say, Batgirl or Supergirl, just strictly for, the the licensing fees, the marketability of it all sort of thing. So really, kind of a cheap cash grab, but it's gone on to become so much more sensational than that. For Secret Wars specifically, she was amongst the Avengers who joined the hero side of Battleworld in the Beyonders' big scheme of mashing action figures together. I don't know what his end game there was, but nevertheless, she's, didn't have a lot to do throughout the run of the series. She first did encounter her longtime nemesis, Titania, during that time, and I think most importantly, the Fantastic Four were also there-ish. At the end of the series, Ben Grimm, the Thing, became human, for a brief time anyway, so she just happened to kind of be there and said, hey, I'll be your bruiser if you want, so she joined Fantastic Four, and this is where we kind of get She-Hulk in that, fabulous, bare-legged Fantastic Four uniform for a while. So really a great glow up for her, great spotlight for her being in Marvel's first family, and also kind of brings us to our next point here. While the Fantastic Four, again-ish, were there for the Secret Wars, Sue Storm was not. She was actually pregnant back home, and so, really it was just the three that went, and Sue had to, leave it out. So it's one of those things where, I don't know if the Beyonder was just like, ick, she's pregnant, I don't want this, or maybe perhaps it was the writers doing this, but she sat it out, and, eventually found a new member at the very end. So I'm not making a separate Fantastic Four video, I'm just sort of saying this for completion's sake, and also because I think if Mattel was going to make Fantastic Four characters for Secret Wars, you should do soon, pregnant or not. Also, just so I don't get raked through the coals, I will mention that as, heralded as Secret Wars is for introducing Black Suit Spider-Man, it also, introduced us to Black Suit Spider-Woman, Julia Carpenter. She originated from Secret Wars, and her backstory was kind of filled in a little later as sort of, a happy accident of a science experiment, intentional or not, that turned into a equal to Spider-Man. I love the look. It's not a character that I really love, but she really was, Jessica's replacement as Spider-Woman throughout the 80s and 90s. She would sort of, not unlike Captain Marvel, Monica Rambeau, kind of fade into the background from there on out. And, she would sort of pop up more in recent years, go through a lot of different name changes. Again, more style than substance, but, this is where she came from. And again, as Marvel and Mattel were kind of working in tandem, and Mattel was requesting new characters be made for the show, I mean, she could have been one of them. This is kind of why I cap off these characters at 3. Even just doing 1 is too much, but this is a lot of characters. And that speaks to the problem here as well. So, much like the X-Men, there's no prototypes, there's no memos, there's no real, concrete proof that these were even on the table. We have, of course, seen Dazzler and Mystique being proposed for the line. If the Thing had really taken off as they had hoped, as, if it was successful as superpowers, give or take, it's conceivable that any of these characters could have been in. These were, Avengers, Fantastic Four. These were top dogs who should have been in the toy line. Alas, that never happened, and we really don't have any, proof to say, that this was conceivable. It's entirely possible that their names were bandied about in the office, but as it stands, no dice for these gals. Like I say at the end of all my Secret Wars videos, I mean, if you want figures of these characters, there's plenty out there. Not a ton. I think She-Hulk probably gets, the most of the bunch, but there's certainly some out there. If you want, kind of modern 6-inch figures, there's certainly options there. I think there's only 2 really here worth mentioning specifically. So Wasp is a character who is hands down undisputed, has had the most costumes in all of comic book history. I mean, she would have a new one every issue. I mean, the limit does not exist to how many she has. So it's that thing where, it's impossible for Hasbro Marvel Legends to produce all of these. That said, her Secret Wars costume is pretty iconic, and it's that thing where if you do want to create a Secret Wars team in Marvel Legends, she is one you're still going to want to ask for. Nicely. Monica Rambeau actually kind of came out a little bit stronger here, though. In a 2-pack with Doctor Doom, Monica in the big flippy sleeve costume finally did get made in 2023. This one is very Secret Wars coded, though, in the sense that the Doom that she came packed in is very similar to the one that was, from the original Mattel Secret Wars line. So I think that's sort of, the real kind of fun tidbit in this whole, line of characters. But otherwise, you can find the ladies, even, from back in the Toy Biz days. There's plenty of options out there. For an actual Secret Wars revitalization, that's less likely. As we've discussed before, Hasbro, of course, has the Mattel license. Mattel has sort of a little bit of a stranglehold on the body construction of the Secret Wars. So It's kind of impossible, barring some of the cooperation they've had over the past year or so. But I wouldn't expect to see a retro wave truly of the Secret Wars characters anytime soon. But you never know. And that'll do it for the ladies of Avengers, as well as Secret Wars as a whole. I'm finally kind of putting a hat on this series. The line, I mean, it had so much promise. I'm not a big fan of the body construction of them. I truly did not like the shields they came with. It was a weird line, and I think compared to superpowers, it just didn't live up to expectations. I mean, it's really one of those things where as we've seen with Todd McFarlane stuff. I mean, we really do get a lot of passion and nostalgia for superpowers, but less so Secret Wars. I think if it had continued and had really built out the world, we could have gotten a really fun moment in time 1980s team of Marvel. But alas, it just didn't quite stick. But regardless, thank you for watching. Thank you for liking, subscribing, YouTube, commenting, all those things. And I will see you next time on MIA 80s Ladies.